After a long summer break, I'm back to my Mixed Media Tuesdays, and today I'm working on my watercolor paper journal. This is a 6x6 journal, and I'm planning to use only old supplies. And I'm shopping my stash. The idea came because I'm in the process of cleaning up my craft room, finding very old supplies that I need to throw away, like mediums that are completely dry. So today, before throwing them in the bin, you will see what I'm going to do with them. So anyway, I am starting with some tissue paper by Tim Holtz. I had this for a long time, and I'm going to use it to start my page with. So I'm tearing areas that have mostly text. I don't want to use any of the flowers. And just because I get a lot the question if I have a plan from start. Now at this point I have the plan of using only old supplies. And the second plan is to do something for fall. So I want to start with a dark background that is going to give browns and black, and so that on that background I can stick on top probably leaves that can be more vibrant colors and pop. So that's the idea that I have at the moment, and I'm starting by using a very old rice paper glue. As you can see here, it's completely dry, but before I throw it in the bin, I am determined to use as much of it as I can. I'm also dipping my brush into water just to make sure that I can spread that a little bit better. And as I'm sticking the tissue paper down, I'm making sure that I cover it on top as well. I'm going to use my heat gun to speed up the drying process, and then for the next step I decided to use my distress paints. These are acrylic paints from the distress line by Tim Holtz. They are over 10 years old and if you remember, they came with a sponge on top. Some of them are completely dry, so before I throw them in the bin, I'll try to use what I can out of them and just check what is working and what's not. So anyway, I'm trying to pick some colors that are perfect for fall. And I'm starting with ground espresso. I'm just trying to figure out if this is dry or it's working. So you see, it does work, it transfers color, but I want this to be thicker, a thicker layer. So I'm just going to open it up and try to add some paint on my glass mat. But just because it is so old, it's so gooey, look at that. But I am determined to use as much as I can of it. So I'm just going to bring a brush and just apply it as if nothing is happening. Now I am not going to cover up the whole background at the back. I'm going to bring in one more color. This is one of the metallics. It gives a lovely shine on it. It has a copper finish. So I'm just going to mix it up with what I already have on my page. And I'm going to completely cover up everything white that you see on the page, making sure that I mix the colors on my page. Again, remember that I'm working on a watercolor paper, so it takes wet mediums nicely. You see, it doesn't warp at all, and I can do the mixing with no issues. So I'm doing brushstrokes that are vertical and horizontal, creating kind of a visual texture on my background. Now I'm going to bring in a very stiff dry brush, and I'm going to create brushstrokes vertically and horizontally. This is a great technique which is going to give even more texture, and it works just because the acrylic paint isn't dry yet. I'm also wiping off the excess from my brush on a paper towel so that I can continue with the same technique. You see, it gives a beautiful result on the background. And another similar way that you can create texture when the acrylic paint is still dry is by using a spatula, and you can scrape off some of the paint here and there. I'm always working on layers, and every time I finish one layer I decide what I want to do next. So here I'm feeling that I need to add some extra color, and you see this is another one of my old acrylic paints. It's completely dry, it's gooey again, but I'm going to use a dry brush and do some dry brushing in some areas before I throw it in the bin. I'm committed into using everything old today. So I'm just adding some areas here and there with this. This is spiced marmalade, by the way. And instantly I create some highlights on my background so it's not that brown. Now let's move on to another step. I feel like I need to add some splatters. So again, with the same old paint, I'm going to add some water, dilute it, and add some splattering all over the place. And every time I see how that layer looks and decide on the next step. So here I'm feeling like I want to do a little bit of stamping. I'm using archival ink, permanent ink, and I'm going to do some stamping with a very old stamp. I keep on using this one again and again. This is from the ETCETERA stamp set by Holtz. It's absolutely my favorite background stamp of all times because it gives me smaller fonts, bigger fonts, bold fonts. I mean, it has everything, this one. So anyway, I am happy with the stamping and I'm thinking what the next step would be. So I'm bringing in another stamp, which again is from the same stamp set. And I'm adding some circle stamping this time just to play with shapes as well on the background. And now let's do some stenciling, one of my favorite techniques. I'm going to use an old stencil by Holtz and I have this texture paste. This is about a year that I've opened the jar and I'm wondering if it is dry, but it is workable, it's not dry at all, so I'm good to go. The thicker the paste, the better the result, so I am always happy when it gets a little bit thicker than it should be, because the results are always perfect. So I'm just trying to decide which areas I want to transfer of the stencil, and to tell you the truth, I never try to transfer the whole stencil as it is. I always try to make it look more organic in different areas here and there, and always altering the areas that I used, so I get different numbers and letters all over the place. And I'm never happy with splattering, so I'm going to add some black splattering as well. This is just a dab of black acrylic paint, which I'm going to dilute with water and add some splattering all over the place. Then I'm still not happy with how it looks and I want to bring some kind of a bright color on top of it, and there is nothing better to do that by using white paint. Now here I'm using white calligraphy ink. I get a lot of questions about that. I find that white calligraphy ink is quite thick and it stays on top of other layers, being nice, white and bright without contaminating the white from what is underneath. Well, in this case we do have acrylic paints which are permanent underneath, but even if you had oxides or even distress ink, you would find, or watercolor, you would find that calligraphy ink is the one that kind of resists the most out of every other splattering. Now, again, I'm back to my old acrylic paints. I'm not happy with how much light I have on my background, so I'm going to do a little bit more of dry brushing with this orange color, just in a few areas. So you see, I don't have a plan from the beginning. I just wing it and I just decide what the next step could be based on what I already have. So you can work on a background forever. You can add more and more layers, one on top of the other. I'm just going to say it's done for now. I'm going to leave it aside and let's work on the focal points. And for that I'm going to play with these Sizzix dies. These are called leaf fragments, designed by Holtz, and I have them in my stash for a long time. However, I think that they are re-released and you can find them. They are still available online. Now I'm trying to decide how many leaves I want to use, maybe only one at the center or maybe 3 in a row. You can just play with it and decide. Even if you do 2 pages, you can have a row of all those leaves on both pages, along both pages. So I think I'm going to go this way, kind of create a cluster of the leaves, but I'm going to create way more leaves that I need so that I can have lots of them to play with and decide on the final composition. So for the leaves I will be working on this distress mixed media paper, and this is a pack that I have for years. I don't even remember when I got it. I'm going to create 4 leaves, so I need to have 4 little pieces of paper like these ones, and I will play with my sprays. Again, I have my distress sprays for a long time and I absolutely love them. The good thing about them is that they don't clog and they don't get old. So no matter how many years you have them, they are still good to go. I'm going to pick some colors that would give lovely, vibrant coloring for fall leaves, and I'm just going to do the smoothing technique. You will always get beautiful results. I am going to mix different colors like browns, yellows and oranges. And I want to have options, so I'm going to make many of them, and this way I will be able to choose my favorite. Since you do have them on your table, just go ahead and have fun with it. If you end up with more leaves that you like, you can definitely do other projects. You use them on cards or mini art journals. By the way, I'm working on my glass mat, and just trust the process. No matter how it looks, it's going to look beautiful at the end once you place the dies on top and run them through your die cutting machine. So let's see what I got. And if you ask me, I feel like they all look just stunning the way they are. They would make perfect focal points for any fall card, Thanksgiving cards, and I feel like just by adding a few touches, we are going to really elevate them and make them perfect for art journals. So I am going to do a little bit of stamping. Don't overdo it, don't add stamping all over the place. I do have stamping at the background, so I want to bring that same detail on the leaves, but only here and there. I'm also going to ink up the edges, and for that I'm using Distress Ink. That's vintage photo. You can go with an even darker brown if you like. Don't overdo it, you don't want to cover up that brightness of the oranges and the yellows, but just a little bit on the edges is going to make a big difference, trust me. Then another thing that you can do is to add some splatters with water and just dab the excess, which is going to lift some color and create those droplets. And then you can add some splattering with brown. Here I'm just using a brown spray. And now let's create the cluster. Since I'm working only with old supplies, I have these ephemera packs by Tim Holtz for ages. So I'm just going to pick 2 of them, and I'm going with the ones that contrast the background, so they are kind of bright brown. I am going to just layer one on top of the other, but first let's distress them a little bit. For that I'm just going to ink up the edges. I'm going to also use my scissors to fray the edges and add some extra texture and dimension. I also like to create notches with my scissors, and then with my reverse tweezers I like to turn and curl the edges. I repeated the same process on the other piece of ephemera, and then I'm going to stick them together so that you can see what is behind, just popping from behind. And then I'm just going to add some splatters because I can never have enough on my projects. So I do have some brown ink on my glass mat. I'm going to add even more now, and I'm going to dilute it with water. Since I'm planning to add an extra texture on my page for layering, and I just want to have a pool of brown paint there so that I can dye my cheesecloth. Now, you can either use cheesecloth or medical gauze. if you can find that. I like the texture. It doesn't add too much business on a page, but at the same time it adds something extra. So it's time to create my composition. I'm going to stick the cheesecloth underneath, and on top I have my couple of ephemera. And this is where you can add even more little pieces. You can tack more ephemera behind the ones that I have or on top. In any case, I don't want to make it look even busier than it already is. So I decided to use those 3 leaves as my composition at the top. But just to help those leaves stand against each other, I'm going to ink up the edges one more time, but this time with black soot. This is going to create a more dramatic effect, and you will see that once I layer them one on top of the other, they will stand out more. Use whatever type of white glue you have for that. I'm going with my collage medium because that's what I have on my desk right now. A little goes a long way. I see many people use tons and tons of glue at the back. You really don't need to. Your leaves don't want to escape the page. If you add a good blob in one area, it's going to just stay there. This gives some movement on the leaves. So you see at the top, they are not stuck down. Now before this is dry, I can rearrange them a little bit. And I like that glue because it dries completely matte, so it's not going to show if I mess up in some areas. Now, since I am committed into using old supplies today, I'm bringing in those chipboard sentiments. These are sayings by a very, very old pack by Tim Holtz. I keep on using them for ages and they never end. So I'm going to pick one of them for today and just place it there. And to finish off my page, I'm just going to add even more white splattering because a page is never finished for me if I don't do that last step. I know that I already have white splattering at the background, but I want to have some of those on top of my ephemera and the leaves. So that was the project for today. I hope that you had fun, that you got inspired to use up whatever you have in your stash. Just use your old supplies and create something beautiful for fall. Everything I used, if it's available, I will link it down below in the description if you want to check that out. And here are some close-up photos on the project that I made for today. Don't forget to like the video and leave a comment. Very important steps to help my channel and motivate me to share even more. Thank you and bye bye.